Hello and welcome. This is a new video, a new episode on what the media won't tell you. Today, I'm going to be diving very deep into another very fascinating character, Ibrahim Traoré, the current president of Burkina Faso. And maybe you've seen the man. Here's a picture. He is basically all over TikTok. And I know that somewhere here and there in the media, his face has popped up or there have been headlines. And there were a few things where I was like, I have to dive deeper into this. I have to see the truth in that, which funnily enough, if you've caught any of his content where you actually heard him speak and not just somebody talk about him, he is claiming himself to be a truth seeker, which got me started to be interested anyways. So this video is going to dive deep into who is this man? Who is Ibrahim Traoré? Then what is his mission? What is his role? Then I had a lot of other questions on why is he kind of popping now? Like, why is he emerging on media now? He's already in the office as president, and he started as an interim president in Burkina Faso from September 22. So it's 2.5, 3-ish years, but only recently, over the last month, now it's June 2025, and it was this year more or less where he started to pop. So this is where we're going to dive in. We're going to see it's very interesting. I sat this morning here and connected deeply. I'm going to share in a second how I did this. As always in these videos, there's full transparency about how I am conducting the results that I'm sharing, which sources I am connecting to, where am I channeling from, or where is the information from. So I want this to be fully transparent. And having said that, when you keep listening, when you decide and choose to keep watching or listening to this, then know that it is to your own discernment to just listen to all of the information. And then absolutely, as always, the invitation, you find your own truth in that. Okay. So I'm Judith. I'm a consultant. I'm a coach and also a channel. I have a consultancy for entrepreneurs, decision makers, CEOs, leaders that is called Future Nexus. It's a visionary consultancy, and obviously I am also using skills I have plus all of the experiences and the qualifications I have to support individuals and the organizations to make the switch from going from sustainable business models and ways of working and operating and strategies into what we need for the future, which is all of that in a conscious version. And that is a switch overall from a vertical way of operating and creating and building to a horizontal one. Okay. Overall, that, hello, if you're new here, you can click the bell and follow and connect and do all the things. Give it a like if you love this. And I'll share in a second what exactly I did to obtain the information on Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, and other sources that I can connect to and get information from. Okay. So for him in particular, I had the chance. I mean, he's alive on this planet, so his consciousness and his field is here on the planet. So it just happened along the process that I was able to also connect to him directly, to his field, if you want, right? If you understand a little bit about how the quantum field works, how these energy fields work, remote connections, if you want. So I was able, for a part of the information, to kind of have a conversation with him through the ether, if you will. Okay. So a part of the information was communication directly with him, which was really amazing. And I got to experience him from soul or source, if you want. Then I also, to get more perspectives, what I'm training myself in at the moment. Overall, I did some remote viewing on a few situations. And then the other thing I did is I have a very strong access connection to a council up there in space, which is called the Ashtasheran Council, which is a council of over 300 members from all across the universe, which I'm part of. And I have the consciousness collective, if you want. So a whole, like a huge library that I can connect to as well and ask questions and get feedback and get their perspective and view. So this one has been pretty cool to have multiple perspectives, to have information from and bring these all together into what I'm about to share. Okay. Again, if you choose to, then see how it lands for you, what resonates, where you find your own truth in, use your own sources. On top of that, this is adding perspectives and adding pieces of information that then for you can decide whether that rings true for you or if it inspires you to ask another question or dive deeper or whatever it is that it might inspire you to, okay? This is the whole purpose of these videos. Let's dive in. So who is this person? Why did I ask that question? Because I saw a lot of content about him, and I'm saying specifically about him on TikTok. Because if you put in the name in the search bar, the algorithm will very quickly fill your For You page with videos where people tell stories about what he does. And on TikTok, you will find a lot of things that like glorify what he does, or, he's like portrayed a lot like the new hero of Africa. So a rather young person, born 88, and so it must be 37. So for a presidential person, quite young, right? So a young leader, like the new voice, the new hope of Africa, and a very specific way of communicating. So then there's also videos where you can see him speaking, apparently in situations where he's giving a speech somewhere and is addressing certain topics. So this is a mix of content that is there. And to me, I had some nudge. I'm like, something does not feel real. So I actually really had the question coming up for me. It's like, does this person even exist? Like, is this man that I do see here in these videos, and where there's sometimes just an overlay picture and somebody is just put a voiceover on the video saying like, this is what he said. And then the person is just saying it, or it's AI generated or whatever it is. But there were so many different things where I was like, I'm not sure if this is like a narrative that is being completely created at the moment, and if this person actually really exists in the way that he is portrayed and overall. So to make this short, yes, he does exist. There's a lot of buts though to everything that you can find online and on social media. And this is what I also had the chance to have a discussion with him about. But that is part two, right? So part one, what we're going to answer now is, who is this person? And for that purpose, I also connected to the Ashtasheran consciousness, to that collective, to get this higher level view, if you want. It's like a bird's eye view, a higher meta level of information. And also, as it is a huge council of, there's so much knowledge and wisdom coming together, it's always like a really, really great source of information. So what I saw, or what I got as information is, when you look at who is he, I want to see like, who is that soul? Who is that consciousness, right? Who is that person that came into this body here as a human in this lifetime? Because yes, he does exist, apparently. There's official government pages of Burkina Faso that I've also done from reading through. There's some papers on there displaying what he has achieved already over his term in the office over the last 2.5 years. So this is alleged person. He is allegedly officially this president of the country. And not only interim wise, but this status changed last year, some point, middle of the year, I believe. And now he's like the official president, appointed, I think, up until like 2029 or something. But that doesn't matter. So I'm like, okay, who else is this person, this consciousness beyond these facts, okay, and the role he has in this office situation, okay? And what I got from the Ashtasheran consciousness was really interesting. I'm like, okay, a huge part of his soul origin, if you want, is from Mars. So there's a Marsian share in him. So a huge Marsian share from planet Mars. It's really interesting. I haven't had that. And funnily enough, who popped in once this information came through, who did come into the field, who did I see as well, is our good friend Elon Musk. So, and apparently he also has a lot of Martian parts within him, which does not then surprise me. I mean, he's publicly sharing for ages that he's wanting to colonize Mars and trying to reach Mars with the spaceships, etc., right? So that was funny, kind of. So that is a huge share of Ibrahim Traoré's soul origin as well. But also there's a smaller share of, that was also interesting. I saw when I tapped into his field, I saw a lot of, with the question of who are you? I saw a lot of fire, like from the sun, like not fire in burning something to destroy, but really this, like the sun. When you get very close to the sun, you see like these kind of flamey, fiery things. And that is what I saw. So I'm like, okay, what else is there? What parts, other parts of him have come down here? And there's like a source sun part within him as well. And then I asked the council, I'm like, okay, is he aware? Has he already started to remember his origin, like who he is, where he comes from, where he originates from on the soul level? And the answer was split. So he is aware of this Martian part. And in a second, you will understand why. You can also see that in what he does and how he creates and in what he's passionate about. But he's not aware yet about this source sun parts of him. So this is the major things. There may be smaller fractals of other parts as well, but the Martian one is very dominant in him. Not the only one, as we see, and then also obviously as he is in his human body and the human person that he is in this lifetime. Obviously, this is also part of who he is. But then there's also, as we know, we are all different parts depending on our origin of the consciousness that we bring wisdom from and that we bring experiences from, that we then get to express here on the planet once we start to remember and reconnect. And he has started to remember this Martian part of him. And then I asked, like, okay, what are the qualities? Because I've never connected to the Martian field and to that consciousness and to understand, like, what do they represent? What is that field representing? Like for the Arcturians, for example, there's a lot of, like, from our point of view, very modern technology going a lot into medical things. So I was like, okay, what would that be for this Martian energy, for that field, for that consciousness? What kind of a wisdom, what kind of knowledge transfer is somebody like him bringing then? And it was interesting because it was all about, like, it's these people in human bodies will a lot of times have like a very strong presence, also in physicality. So would usually not be somebody who's like a stick figure just from the body shape and form. I mean, you can see that in him. If you look at pictures and videos of him, he is very present, very strong presence. And I mean, you can say the same about Elon Musk. He's like a tall guy, just the physical presence is just there. You cannot not see the person when they enter the room, right? So, but that is also a characteristic of these Martian people when they are in a human body. So it was interesting. But what was even more interesting was the combination of very high intellect, like human intellect, if you want, like the cognition, the human cognition, and then mixed with they have like a warrior part in them, but not from how we would interpret warrior, maybe in going into war and that part, but more the warrior energy in form of they're very persistent. They keep going. They go and they go and they go and they go. That is more like this type of warrior energy, like not giving up, like being okay. This is how we've come. There's a lot of way to go, but we will go. This is stamina also, like in that sense, if you want, grit, stamina, persistence, that type of warrior presence. And then content-wise, what do these people bring beyond leadership through their presence, because they cannot not be seen, right? So automatically they will be in the discussion. They will be in positions where they get to voice, where they get to speak about these things. They're very straight, very direct. And they are connected to tech, like mechanical things, engineering things. And then in the sense of, I got the picture of, when you think of a company like NVIDIA, they do these chips, right? That's very, very fine, very thin, it's like a small piece. It's also kind of produced, manufactured, right? But these people, like this Martian energy plus the wisdom and the knowledge, is more like manufacturing of bigger things. I mean, you can see in Elon Musk, Tesla as a car, the robots, the SpaceX, this is constructing things that have more physicality, if you want. This is heavier. It is more machinery-like, yet it is always connected to something technologically into advancement, something that will support and guide humanity more towards the future. So it's not about rebuilding Henry Ford's car assembly line system ideas, but it is a group of people who will bring newer technology, but in the form of something that will take heavy structures and heavy form, like a car, like, something like that, machinery, etc., etc. So that is also what is connected to him and his field through this Martian part, which is a huge share of him and who he is. That was interesting. And then also, what else I saw, he is very much protected by the energy and the spirit of Metatron, which is an archangel and ascended master. So if you don't know what that means, Google it, check it out. I'm not going to dive into this video into that part, but this is an energy and a spirit that is with him all of the time, protecting. Because people like him will always be, once they are more in the public eye and more in the heat of discussions, will always be in like the ceasefire, if you want. They will be criticized a lot because it's so interesting. Every time I do these videos, something happens with my voice. Anyway, so there will be a lot of criticism. People may be coming against him. And if you check online, it is said to, and I haven't checked on that question, it is said that there have been several attempts to kill him and assassinate him, but I have not talked with him or have not checked on this information to see if that is valid or legit. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised, because where he is, I mean, the country itself, plus what he is talking about, absolutely gives opportunity, I want to say. There's enough people who will not be very happy with the way that he is operating because it will destroy and disrupt all systems as well. Then what else do we have? I'm having notes here because it's like 3 pages of information I got. Oh yeah, there is something I will come to how this is showing up a bit later, but another gift, another skill set that he brings upon him is through this Martian energy, but that also is coming out from that sun, the source sun as well, is a high ability of telepathic transmission and a way of bringing something into form this way. Not potentially through him directly, but bringing what he telepathically transports, can be like a thought and concept, an idea, bring that into the field somewhere, and it potentially may materialize or come into existence in a completely different way by somebody else, right? So, but this is overall a skill set that he brings as well. That is the one on who he is, okay? So then I tapped into what is his role, and this is where I got to connect with him directly, which was really interesting. And then also with the Ashtasheran consciousness, okay? So overall, they told me he is a builder and an enabler, which is like the next path in this whole evolution of the planet that we're undergoing, right? If you look at these characters like Donald Trump, and I've talked about that in another video as well, it must be from like February or March. You can look that up on my channel as well if you want, or I'm going to link that in the description below. So Donald Trump's role here is to be the disruptor. He's here, and look at how he is operating. He's disrupting a lot. Like, he's here to destroy old systems, to disrupt, to be the person who is, always like throwing the bomb somewhere. I mean, I don't mean literally, but verbally a lot, right? It's very, very much that. While then Ibrahim Traoré is more of that, the people who come then next, once the old structures are open and the systems are either destroyed or disrupted enough so that then space starts to emerge for something new to be built. And we need these people too. And Ibrahim Traoré is such a person. Is a builder, an enabler, right? And building then in the sense of building, if it be in his country, factories, infrastructure, like literally building, but then also building new allies, new structures, new ways of leadership, new collaborations, like this also, it's both layers, right? He's somebody who is here to do that. That is his role in the next years. And also he is a speaker. So he will voice and use his voice and speaking a lot to bring about what he is about, like why he's here. The difference is there is people who speak more or less for the sake of speaking and the sake of the message when they speak about what needs to change for people, because he is talking and he will more, I think, speak about freedom for people, about sovereignty and equality. Sovereignty is a huge topic in his world, what he stands for, which makes sense if you consider he is representing one of these African countries that are considered the poorest in the world, and the whole narrative about how the Western world portrays Africa overall which resource-wise is a very rich continent, but the whole world kind of is aiding Africa all of the time, right? But that is a whole other topic to talk about, but this is a lot what he speaks about, and the sovereignty that we need to have back for especially Africa as a continent, but also the individual countries and the individual people in the country. And what I mean about speaker and speaker, there's people who would use their voice and speaking to convey this message and to make it about the people, which is great. And he is using both, if you want. He's using the narrative of that, but it comes from his soul. When you hear him speak, you can sense and see and hear that he speaks from his truth, and that comes from heart and soul. And he is using that for enabling this building, the building up of structures, new governmental structures, then actually like construction, infrastructure, new economic systems. Like he is using his voice and these topics in order to free the way or open the way up or rebuild or build new what hasn't existed before, or create the environment so that people in the country actually can start to build upon that or within that. So he's a lot using his speech and his voice and the polarization that comes from what he says and how he says it in order to create these new structures. That's why he is this builder, but also the enabler. And how he is conducting it in a first step is using his voice, speaking, saying what needs to be said, what is uncomfortable to a lot of people, because it changes the whole narrative about the continent, the countries, the economy, the abilities. Even there is videos that talk about, and I'll come to that in a second, about how we learned the history of the last couple of hundreds and thousand years of our planet, and then obviously about the different cultures and the continents and the people and who contributed what, etc., etc. If you are not completely new to looking at the world in a different way, you may have heard or you may already know that what you classically will have learned in school in history does not necessarily have congruence with what actually happened, okay? So there may be different versions of history of mankind and humanity when you look at the last maybe 2, 3, 4,000 years, okay? So that is what he's here to do. Overall, that's his role. Then let me take a look at these notes. It is the political narratives that is something that stands out here when I look at my notes. Political narratives also is what he is changing, not only the history, what I've just laid out, but political narratives that created this current economic situation that most African countries find themselves in. And he is now here to change that. It's really cool. And I'll give you a couple of seconds here just to hear him speak. Listen to this. It's going to be like, I don't know, 10 seconds or something, or 15. Just listen to how he uses speech and language when he commands change and evolution and disruption. See and sense the energy, and also pay attention to the words he is using, okay? And I'll be right back with you.
France, this is not just about money. It is about restoring spiritual balance. It is about putting fire to the illusion that you can erase a crime by calling it history. We are not chasing revenge. We are proclaiming rebirth. Africa is not rising to destroy. Africa is rising to rebuild. But no house can stand on soil where ghosts still roam free.
Okay, cool. So did you notice how he speaks about the changes he wants, but he speaks about soul, about spiritual things. He speaks very calmly. There's no aggression in his voice. While he's very clear and very commanding on what he wants and how he wants things to be, and also what he wants to end. Can you also notice how he speaks about how he's wanting to claim sovereignty but no revenge? Okay, so just for you to have a first impression if you've never seen or heard him speak, okay? So it's really interesting, very charismatic character, and I do feel, that's personal opinion now, and gut feeling, and a lot from my inner wisdom that is having resonance to this. When I was connected to him, and also when I was listening to content that you can hear online where he actually really speaks himself and it's not somebody else talking about him, I got this inner kind of knowing that we will see way, way more from him, of him, and hear about him, like hear him speak and take a bigger role, a way bigger role. Even if you may think, wow, it's one president of a tiny African country in the west of Africa. How can that person be so relevant for the whole world? Let's observe. My gut feeling, my intuition, my inner knowing usually never fails. Give it another year, maybe 2, maybe 3, and then let's look back where we are at. I have that inner knowing that he will be very relevant in the trajectory of how the world evolves, and especially how economic power on the globe will be redistributed. It will hurt, and overall the end result will be beneficial for everyone, for the majority, okay? Which is great. So then I also asked, it's like this is when I got closer into conversation with him. I'm like, why is it that now, I mean, you are the president for that country already 2.5 years. Why is it now that 2025, all of this content about you starts to pop up? Why is it that now you are becoming part of the narrative online, one way or the other? And then he kind of smiled. He's like, yeah, that is because 2 years ago when I started to come into office, it was not possible because the world was at a different stage. And, just think back, that was before Donald Trump started to disrupt and take his role, if you will, okay? Again, I'm not saying here everything everyone is doing is perfect, is great, but you need to look from these higher perspectives, right? Just think about the overall role. Knowing that Donald Trump, for example, is the person who needs to disrupt and break open and destroy. He has been very good at doing that, right? If you just look at this purpose. So, and this needed to be done for someone like Ibrahim Traoré now to come out more, to be seen more. That was one reason. And the other, he said, is it is actually truth that the country that I'm governing here has so many issues locally. We needed to start working here first. I needed to build new allies. I needed to reorganize a lot of things. We needed to really take care of the people locally here and fix a few things locally here. And one thing that he's done, I think last year, about a year and a half ago, is he bought back 2 gold mines to the country. So now the gold mines are not exporting all of that and leaving barely no profit from that in the country, but it is now manufacturing and producing and sourcing for their own economy. Just to give you one example, do some research and you will find a few more things. But this is just one thing. And he reflected that back to me. There were things to be done that needed to be set up to create a more solid baseline now and like a roadmap and a pathway of change in the country. Plus, we needed to change networks here. I needed to rebuild some allies, we needed to get out as a country of some sort of collaborations here across Africa. And he is now a lot connecting to more Sahel zone countries. There's other alliances now forming that are more future oriented in the sense of sovereignty creation, where the whole country and the people actually also benefit from. So this is the 2 reasons he told me, and I love the discussion. And he not only talked about or pointed to the US and Trump, but we then saw again the whole world. When you look at the bigger areas of the world, obviously Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been driving forces from the North American, US continent and side of the world, right? Driving different disruptive states from there. Then obviously you have China also infused from that. Think about all of the tariff stuff, etc. And now, the reactions and the things coming through that now, where if you open TikTok again, or you can Google, I think you can already Google, right? But there's this trend for opening all of the supply chains across categories, because China, let's be honest, they are producing probably 80 to 90% of what is manufactured on the planet that you consume as consumer goods, in no matter what categories, not only fashion, right? And they are just opening all of the supply chains. It's, there's huge changes that will have global economic impact. And then we have Europe. If you just look at Europe overall, I'm not going to dive too deep into that, right? But Europe overall is very unstable. There's a lot of destabilization in Europe going on politically as well. And the economies, the big economies, including here, I'm in Germany, the economy's not doing well. And there's going to be more turmoil and there's going to be more disruption over the next years. We're going to see that. And he also pointed to all of this, like, let's look at the world. It needed to come to this point of instability, this breakdown, if you want, the overall picture. If you want change, if you want something new, you always need first the breakdown and a crash for something new that can come up to be built, right? And now that is also, it's like, I needed to wait a little bit, like, until this point in the evolution of the world and mankind had come, which is now-ish, is this year. And that is fully aligned to 2025. And then what also we will see next year, right? You can listen to every astrology person who is looking into these things. This is all the same truth, the same narrative that everyone is seeing, right? It's a little bit more right and left depending on who's looking at the thing or its situation, but the overall direction, the overall wisdom that everyone is sharing goes into that direction. We are in this time now, 25 and 26, where this turnaround starts, right? Where enough of the old is broken open, if you want, or has been brought to light, has been revealed. Everything under the surface, all the scandals, all of the, darker stuff is coming to the light. And this is now opening the pathway for new things. And this is where he comes into play. And this is all of the examples that he gave me for that. What else is there? So then I dove with him, but also with the council again. And then I went into my remote viewing, like observing what else I could see about the country, about him, about alliances, etc., about where this is going. What is the overall mission, right? What is the mission? And with clarity came almost simultaneously from him, but also from the Ashtasheran Council, which was really amazing, that he's here for taking back sovereignty. He is representing this idea and this concept for the world, right? This is what he is doing is not only for his country, it's not only for Burkina Faso. And that is what I could check in with him as well. I'm like, what you're doing is bigger than your country. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, it is also bigger than the African continent. He's like, yes. Like, is it to also influence and support a certain evolution for the whole planet? He's like, yes. I'm like, what is the core of that for you? What is the core thing that you're driving with all of that? And then that's where he says, like, taking back sovereignty for the individual person, but also for a community, for a country. So disconnecting these concepts and ideas of dependencies and one country or one community being dominated by another or by another leader, or the old political power systems, economical power systems, etc., to change this narrative. And he says, what I'm doing here in my country, this is then leading by examples. Like, we're creating here, so I'm walking my talk, and I will be communicating about this for influencing the world overall. But obviously that will not happen overnight. So this is where he's like kind of smiling a little bit, and then the stamina, this energy came back, and it's like, it's going to be a longer walk, but I'm here for it. So, and then what the council also gave me is, I checked with them as well on this truth seeker. Like, he claims to be a truth seeker. And it is it is about this dismantling of lies so that capitalism can end. That came through very clearly, which I found amazing as well. It's like, I'm driving this, and this is, they said also he is driving this. It's the mission to end capitalism and dismantle more of the lies in these fields, right? Over the last 6 to 10 to 12 months, we've seen a lot of dismantling of old systems. If you think Hollywood, if you think like the whole celebrity shit stuff, all of that. But then now he's coming in and opening another topic where there's a lot of things. Like, he's talking a lot about neo-colonialism. That's what it's called, right? From mainly European countries that used to colonize African countries. And even though officially there's a lot of independence, unofficially, economically, this is still existing. And this is also what he's addressing a lot, where he is using this sovereignty idea and wants to implement more of that, and leading again with his country. But this is the mission why he's here. And if you look at how he's going to achieve that, right? How is he going to be a builder and an enabler? That is the mission. How he's going to fulfill the role. That was really cool. So I hope you're still with me, and I hope this gives you great information. I have one last part. It's part 3 of the video. And to me, that is the most funniest part, because I said in the beginning, there are so many videos that talk about him on TikTok, where you see just a picture of him put as an overlay or something and some crazy headline, obviously to stop the scroll. And then you just hear like a voice-over voice. Sometimes it sounds like it's human. Sometimes you can hear that it is somehow AI or something. And a lot of times it claims to replay a speech that he gave somewhere, or in the way that, I don't know, he wrote something, but it's claiming it's his words, or something happened where he was, right? And I tapped in with him and I'm like, okay, what is this? I have a feeling a lot of this is just not true. There's a lot of fake information about you out there. And then he just kind of smiled a little bit and went quiet. And I'm like, okay, let's dive into this. For example, there is a video or several videos talking about how he attended an event at Oxford University, where I don't know exactly what the topic of the event officially was supposed to be, but there is, the storyline goes, or the narrative says, there is a very old professor from Oxford who is giving a speech, and like the cliche thing, white old man, Oxford, Ivy League type of thing, that's the setting, right? And then the whole auditorium is full of also professors, and I don't know who else is there, but people from all around the world, basically. And this professor, in his speech, comes to a point saying that, well, if we look at the world and who contributed what, then we can clearly see that Africa as a continent, as a whole, overall, has never contributed anything meaningful to human history or human evolution. And this is then, it's all just, there's a voiceover and that tells the story. And I'm like, okay, it's interesting. And I mean, the way it is made up is it's intriguing. It's great storytelling. It is something like, oh my goodness, now I need to listen in. And then the story says that Ibrahim Traoré gets up and delivers a 10-minute kind of a speech to prove the professor wrong. And he's listing a lot of things that African countries over the last thousands of years have contributed, how scientific things have evolved in this country and that country, et cetera, et cetera. And, marketing wise, it sounds like, oh my goodness, it's like, the perfect narrative, the perfect hero story, et cetera, et cetera. And something about that, because you never see him speak, right? In any of these videos, you never see him on stage, you never see him speak or hear his voice or any of that. So I'm like, did that ever happen? Did you ever go to Oxford? And he's like, no. Like, am I right assuming that this whole narrative in all of these videos is fake story? And he's like, yeah, that's not true. I've never been to Harvard. I've never been on stage and I've never shared these things. And I have another example, which is, this is current. This is from these days, like June 25. There's a couple of videos that claim that he met with Elon Musk in Burkina Faso. And there's different versions of the story. One version goes saying that Elon Musk comes in secretly with no press, with, nothing official, if you will, just his plane landing. And he asking for a personal meeting with Ibrahim Traoré because he wants to make an offer. And the offer then is that he will build a Tesla factory in Burkina Faso in exchange for some sorts of raw material deals, etc. So that is like the short version. And Ibrahim Traoré just sits there and basically declines the offer and is like, look, I'm not like completely saying no to doing business with you or finding a deal, but it needs to be for the people here to win. It needs to be for. So that is one narrative. The other narrative is that I've seen is that Elon Musk again is approaching him, but not personally this time. But in that narrative, it says like Ibrahim Traoré is sitting in a meeting and with his government, and then somebody hands him a tablet with supposedly a recorded video, a personal message from Elon Musk saying like, oh my goodness, I'm so impressed and I'm so excited about what I'm learning, what you are creating and building in your country. I would love to come and learn from you and then see how we can create and build something together. So a completely different narrative and completely different approach. And I was like, okay, both of them do not sound like they have happened. Okay. So I asked him again, I'm like, did that happen? Did you ever meet Elon Musk in person? He's like, no, I did not. I'm like, okay, that's what I thought. And then likewise, there is also another narrative about him being invited by Trump to the White House and him declining the invitation. And he's like, this never happened either. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like, what is it about it? Because he kept kind of smiling very softly. I'm like, what is that? Which brings me back to remember from the beginning when we looked at who he is and his margin and source soul sun skill sets. When we talked about the telepathic abilities, he's like, well, because when you look at what is the topics that are being addressed by these things, also the Oxford story, right? Because that was all about the history part, correcting this old proclaimed professor that he was wrong in how history has been taught to humans for the last 200 years, etc., etc., and then correcting how the narrative of what actually happened on the planet Earth with humanity across the last thousands of years. And it's like, look at that. The narrative, the overall idea is exactly what needs to change and where light needs to be shed on something that has not been crafted correctly, if you want, is not the truth. And he's like, maybe, and he looked at me like, like giving me a blinking eye a little bit. It's like, maybe I telepathically sent into the bigger human consciousness field the desire and the idea of, well, it would be amazing if we could bring these things into the discussion, bring it more to the public so that people start talking about it. So, but that through that, then it becomes more a reality. The change can start to happen without me actually having to do it. And it's like, okay, that's very interesting. So in a way, he initiated just the idea and the thought of it, but then left it open to the collective consciousness to see where it would manifest and express itself. And the TikTok videos, you can go and search, there's so many, right, are one expression of that. And then also about like him meeting all of these big names and these bigger leaders, right? So far, he has only met with Putin, if you look at global leaders, and more of the Russian politicians. They have been actually meeting, but none of the other political leaders he has been meeting yet, like bigger leaders globally, like African leaders, yes, because he's done the new allies and new collaborations, etc., etc. But like outside of that, there's a lot of narrative about where he was, or like digitally, or like virtually, or in person. And none of that is true until now. But at the same time, it's like, well, at some point I will be meeting them. I know this will happen. So it's kind of a smart way, if you want, but a very gentle one. And it's not enforcing. It is more bringing it into existence through a very smart way. And just think about this ability. Isn't that amazing? And maybe there is one person or even more who sees the video, who's through this, sharing this and being reminded, maybe you remember within you that you also hold this ability, right? Or that you want to start experimenting that. And please, if you do, invitation to be curious and to use it from love. To use everything that you own from love, okay? Use it for the greatest good of everyone. Because that's why we more remember all of that, okay? So we're coming to the end of the video. That was a bit of a 360 degrees view on Ibrahim Traoré, current president of Burkina Faso, 2.5 years, almost 3 in the office. And as it looks now, will be there until 2029 with this mission and huge ambition to change not only the narrative of sovereignty in the country, but in Africa and then for humanity overall. I feel we will hear a lot from him and he will be speaking up more. across the next year, across the next 2 years. We will see. Now we can come back to the video. Let me know below the video, what do you think? Was that helpful? Did you hear about him before? What were your thoughts? What are your ideas? If you have questions, please put them underneath the video and I'm happy to reply. Great. So if you come up to here and you like this, you know what to do. Follow the channel, whether that's Rumble or whether that is on YouTube. Click the notification bells. You can also send the video to someone that you think needs to also hear this or see this. And I'll see you whenever the next video is out.